Hey everyone, welcome to HR Tech Talks. I am Ben Eubanks, your host. I'm so glad to have you here with us today. Looking forward to a great conversation. As always, the first thing I always ask is if you're listening in, you're tuning in, whether for the live session or for the replay, it does not matter. Go ahead and let us know where you're connecting in from. I love to see. Last week it was so much fun to see people from Africa, from Europe, right, from Asia. There was everyone around the world, in addition to the U.S., which is always represented here. So glad to have you here. Looking forward to a conversation today with one of the award-winning companies from our recent HR Tech Awards program, Oleeo. We have Jeanette here. She's going to talk to us about what's happening in the recruiting space. I know that I'm getting all these emails, lately talking about the talent shortage and how we're going to find people and what can we do to recruit. And the friends that I have in the industry who are sitting there having to be responsible for that, having to be accountable for that, are sweating it a little bit because it's a tough time right now. So we're going to talk about how to make it more predictable, how to use data and evidence to tell your stories, to make yourself more credible as a talent leader and get to those things that impact that you're hoping to have. So looking forward to this conversation. And without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring Jeanette into the conversation. Hey, welcome.
Hello. So happy
glad
to be here. Thanks for having me today on this Monday morning in the summer. It is Monday, right?
You know what? We'll go ahead and call it that for the rest of the day, regardless of what anybody else says. So I'm excited to have you here with us. Before we dive into the conversation, talk about some of the things I was teasing a little bit ago, will you give us the audience a little bit of insight into who you are and what you do, please?
Sure. Well, so I'm Jeanette Leeds. I head up Americas for Oleeo. Just by way of background, I'll get to what Oleeo is. Ben, you and I, we share a similar background where I was a practitioner for many years, mostly on Wall Street in recruiting. Actually put in the Oleeo tech product a couple times. And then, decided that the tech world was way more fun. So made the jump from Wall Street to HR tech. Which was actually amazingly 8.5 years ago. So since then, I've got first employee for Oleeo back then. Now we've expanded out, and brings me to, I guess, neatly what Oleeo is. So nowadays we're a recruiting enablement platform, which is so very focused on say 3 pillars. One around AI. And not just from a buzzword standpoint, because I know everyone's like, oh, AI, but AI combining with automation, and then diversity and inclusion. And a lot of people say to me, well, what does even Oleeo mean? And we rebranded, about 3 years ago now. And so, which seems like yesterday, but like a really long time ago. But interestingly about Oleeo, so Oleeo means a diverse collection of things. When it comes together, it makes something beautiful. Which sort of, depending the New York cynic in me is like, really? But, we really believe that and the work we're doing, and to really help, our clients like Bank of America, like, Korn Ferry and a number of other large organizations like that around the world, just, bring things together using data and insights and automating it in a really, really smart way to make things super efficient and allow their teams to just, do the fun part of recruiting, which you and I were talking about before, we went live. So the things that really has drawn all of us to recruiting and talent acquisition, which is people.
Yes. So. We were joking before we started recording for everybody else out there that didn't catch the pre-show. One of the things we were laughing about is not a single one of us, probably. There might be someone out there, and if you are, go ahead and give us a shout out virtually. Yeah. But I don't think there's anyone out there that said, I can't wait to get into recruiting because I want to do job requisitions. I can't wait to process those. I can't wait to post jobs on the internet, and like look at resumes and screen hundreds of resumes for find that one gem. Like, no, it's about how do I spend more time with people and try to find the right person and help them find the right company. And like, it's about all those kind of relationships and dynamics and things like that. That's what honestly was so exciting for me, even as an introvert, to say I get to talk about this amazing company and this amazing culture and what we do and how we serve the community. Like, those excited me, even though I was super duper shy and didn't like to talk about myself at all. It gave me a chance to do that, and so that was why I enjoyed recruiting so much.
Oh, absolutely! It's like the most fun part, and I feel like the best recruiters or heads of TA or whatever you want to call it, it's like those who really believe in the company and what they're doing, and then you can translate that into conversation and get people really excited. I mean, effectively, it ends up being the sales and marketing type of role, and who wants to deal with the admin and sit there and schedule interviews and go back and forth and, oh, when are you available? I mean, that's not fun. Again, maybe it is for some people. I'm like, God bless you. It's like, but hey, let technology do that, and just spend time connecting and figuring out, helping people find those right spots for them. And
yes, I had a chance recently to interview someone, and she used the metaphor of like traffic cops versus city planners. Like one of them's just kind of like handling all the details, and the other one is actually planning and strategizing and organizing. And so I was hoping today to spend some time with you talking about that city planner side a little bit, just to adopt that metaphor from her.
Sure.
Because one of the things that everyone's facing, if you're recruiting right now, you're feeling probably more pressure than you were a few years ago. You're feeling some different kind of struggles and challenges and seeing something in front of you. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about is this idea of using data, using numbers and all these things that we generate in the work we do. We sometimes just kind of create that and move on without stopping to analyze it and look at it and use it. And I feel like that's a missed opportunity. What would you say to that? And talk about the data piece of this a little bit, because I want to explore this with you, because you've, again, not just this abstract thing. We're like, yes, that's important, but you've done this. You've been accountable for this, and so you've had to do this.
Yeah. I have. And I will warn you, I mean, I'm such a data geek. I love numbers and whatnot. So if I really geek out or whatever, like, oh my God, Jeanette, stop. But I mean, to me, and maybe it's having grown up on Wall Street, which is, incredibly number focused, but at the same time, very people focused, but that's, a different story. It has been where you can really see, and see what's going on to make decisions. So I'm going to give you like a story, which I actually haven't told in a million years, but I think this, just from a practitioner standpoint, will bring it to life. So I'm going to go back to, I don't know, it was not the year 2000. Maybe it was 2005. Okay. So I'm going back. Okay. We're going to take a journey back. And I was at Lehman Brothers. And, at the time, things were really competitive with the other banks. And we had an offer out to a number of candidates. And we started, losing. Those candidates had counter offers to, our competitors, who I won't name at the time, but they were like my arch enemy. Now they're my customers. So I love everyone. But and we had a couple days where a few candidates, rejected our offer and accepted the other bank. And literally, I had these investment bankers freaking out because, again, it was like we wanted this talent, we thought we were going to get them, and it felt like, oh my God, we're losing more to this other bank than we have in the past. So I'm like, hang on, like I know this feels bad. I looked at the data. Okay. So I went and I looked back and I'm like, okay, last year, the year before, I'm making up these numbers because it's been a lot of years, but last year we lost, to this company 50% of the time we gave out an offer, we lost, or I guess the last half full, we won 50% of the time. And it actually turned out that year at that point, we were at a not 50% win rate, a 70% win rate. We actually had a couple people that, like, in that one day rejected us, right? So we lost. But if I looked at that recruiting time period, we were kicking ass. We really were. And so I think that's just a great example of, again, I'm going way back in the day, but it's still so incredibly relevant to today, where, like, look, if you know your data and what's happening, again, in the moment can feel really bad. We're reactive. We're like, and then again, as investment bankers, I gave them that information. They're like, oh, okay, great job, Jeanette. Great team. You guys are rocking it. So again, one example, but hopefully really, really realistic for those who are listening. And you can use that for so many different things now. So,
so that reminded me of a story. I had a chance to interview the head of recruiting at H&R Block a few years ago. And one of the things she was telling me about is, she said I know this never happens to anybody else out there in the recruiting world, but they would get a manager that says, hey, I need someone, 2 weeks from now. Hang up the phone. Like, that's the entire conversation.
Oh, totally.
And again, that never happened to you. I'm totally sure. Right.
Never. So, that never happens to any of us.
she said the problem was we hired these big cycles, right? And they'd hire 50 people at a time to be put into training classes once they started, so they'd get everyone in at the right time. And so just number one, that was kind of off cycle, but number two, it's the period of time. It's not I got to call one person and one person shows up for the job. It's
Right.
we source 25, we screen that down to 5, we have calls with 3, we pick one, we make an offer, they say no, we pick the second one, right? Then just like you're talking about, like all these nuances to that. And so they actually brought their hiring funnels in and had the hiring manager come in and say, hey, take a look at this and just look at it and tell me what you see.
Yeah.
And didn't like get in their face and argue with them and just like, what do you see here?
It's like, here's the information. People think, everyone thinks like, oh, recruiting, it's easy. Like everyone knows how to do it. It's not. It's so nuanced. You can make it data driven. You can then understand what's happening. I mean, we have one client. I think this is really cool and relevant to what's happening today that we were mentioning before. It's the Met Police, Metropolitan Police, which is like, NYPD that we all see, or for me, here. It's so huge police force in London. And they, were very focused on, diversity in general, which is very relevant to what's happening in the US today and really around the world, which is huge and amazing. And they were like, well, we need to increase this. So they started digging into their data a little bit. And they had like this insight dashboard that we provided them at Oleeo, and it was great. So they could see at their physical assessment stage, it like broke it out by like male, female, and then like all different stuff. There was like this huge, crazy drop off of women. It was like this really interesting piece. We're like, what is going on here? I mean, like, why? Okay, we're getting women in the funnel to apply, which is like in itself big, like a big important piece. So first it's like sourcing, right? We're all like, oh, let's get to like what's happening. And so they were able to see, and they dug into that. And it was interesting. What they realized, and this is all about like content. They realized the content they were showing to all the candidates showed like a completely male dominant workforce. There was like no females in any of the pictures. It was just completely, so you can imagine, a woman who's gotten to that stage, and they're going to this physical assessment stage, and they're like, oh my God, there's men. And like, do they even want me? Why are I here? Like, so they just had so many people drop off. But they didn't realize what was happening until they dug into the data, and they're like, this is the part that here's the issue. So they had all these conversations, and it was interesting. They ended up redoing all of their content at that, not just that stage, but all of it. And then they display it. And this is what I love, the power of technology, right? Because like back in the day, it'd be like, oh, female candidate, let me send them this. Or like, it's just, again, it's this admin piece. Or, here it was just the magic of tech. And this is what I love, just magically showed up the content that was like female friendly and just really showed what they wanted to be showing. And, there was then the personalized conversations, which, as recruiters, we love that because that's, really the fun stuff. It's like, hey, like you can do this. We want you here. And they increased, it was like, what was the stat? Let me just think. 40% increase of women making it through that stage and ultimately being hired, which is like, again, the data geek in me, that is seriously statistically significant. Yes. So it's like these little insights and seeing the data can have like huge changes.
Yes, absolutely.
And you also look really freaking smart to the rest of the business, So, because we got a lot of times we're like, oh, recruiting HR. It's like, no, this is real. Like we are smart. We know this stuff. We can bring it. We can get this done. This is not just like, la. I mean, it's fun. Don't get me wrong, but.
Well, it's funny. I'll used a London example. I'll use one more just to kick off of that.
International today.
Yes, I saw an interview with the head of HR for Heathrow Airport.
Oh,
and she said they're like, "What's your best tip for someone who wants to be successful in HR and talent?" She says the number one thing has nothing to do with that. You got to know the business. You got to know what they need from you, because if you don't, you can spend all day churning away at those things you think are important, and they're never gonna care.
And that is so true. And I think that was one of the most interesting things for me, making the jump from, being a practitioner to really running a business, right? Like running that, like I now could be so much more effective for better word, is because I truly understand, what's keeping me up at night? What am I seriously worried about? And so I have this great relationship with literally at Oleeo, like the head of talent acquisition, right? And even head of HR, because I'm sitting there and I will make sure that they fully understand, like, hey, this is what I'm really thinking about. Because a lot of people will write off recruiters, right? Like we know this. We all like it is what it is. Where's the power structure in the company? Is HR's recruiting? Is it in the basement of your company? Is it like front and center? Do they have a seat at the table? Right. And so it's that combination of that. And so it makes, again, personally, Oleeo that much more when we're as a talent acquisition tech company, recruiting people on that much more effective and powerful because, the team knows what our challenges are. What do we need? What do we need from a competency standpoint? What are we really sourcing for? Which is huge.
Can I flip that script a little bit and ask you what advice you might give? Because you have the benefit of hindsight now. You have been a recruiter and now you have been a business leader who is responsible for recruiting and bringing talent in right at the end of the day. That's going to roll up to you and make hiring decisions, things like that. So what advice would you give someone who is in TA right now and is having to do that? How can they build better relationships with their business leaders, their counterparts on the business side, so they can better understand that? Because the only hesitation I have with giving out advice, like I just said a minute ago, like mentioned that comment, like know your business.
Right.
Here's the keys. Good luck. I hate to feel like it's just this big black hole. What sort of tactical things would you give them?
Like, here's how you really know the business. Like why, what is your different, and they're partners, right? Everyone's in this together. Like, why is that person, you say, oh, what's keeping them up at night? But like, what's the real challenges? Like, what is from a, they trying to, increase sales in a certain area of the business? Or is it like, God, we have a lot of customers now, like their big thing is, again, getting on workers, right? It's like, we need to make sure we have enough people who are going to like drive trucks to deliver packages, right? Like, what is that? Like, what is freaking them out at night? And if you can really understand that and what their, plan is for, some of it, obviously, if we can be strategic and think 5 years from now, but I feel like right now things are changing day to day. It's like, what is freaking them out right now? And really, and try and have that discussion it's almost like just how you would just talk to someone like, hey, I want to understand your business. So if I can understand your business, forget about like competencies or almost, again, people might think I'm crazy for saying this, but like talk to me as a business person, what are you doing? So that piece, I think that's where you'll get the nuggets that you can understand those like specific business challenges. And then as someone in talent acquisition that's thinking about people, then tie that back into, okay, this is what they're worried about. Now, how can I relate that back to, for almost better words, like helping to ease anxiety through people. Okay. And it's going to be different. It'll be different for everyone. So, if you can get into those strategy meetings that some of the business leaders are having, and not just about people, but like, I don't know if they have like something every couple of weeks you can pop into, just getting those insights can make you much more effective in ways that you don't even imagine because you're not even thinking so.
Awesome. I love that one. I always say what keeps you up at night, but what freaks you out, maybe even more pointed right now, because we're laughing about it, but someone right now is stressed about something. And oftentimes, many times that has a talent component to it. Not every time.
Honestly, in the end, it almost always comes down to people and talent. It really does. If you talk to like lots of people, like that's in the end, it's because it's whatever it is, it comes down to people. It's not just the product. And again, how is someone interacting or what's the relationships between, it just, in the end, it really does. So.
One other extension of that, I want to make sure it's clear to the audience. You're talking about understand what they're worried about, what they're thinking about, but that that's not a separate conversation from what we talked about earlier. That's actually connected on the data side. Absolutely. Because if they tell you, well, I'm worried about A, B, and C, you're like, oh, what data do we have? What information can we pull from our system? What things do we have on hand that relate back to those things? Because then you can not just say, hey, you told me this upsets you. Guess what? Here's what's the example you gave, right? We're
Right.
worried about losing the competition. We're actually beating them a little bit more than we were last year, or we're on
Right.
par, or we are behind. What can we do to solve for that? But at least you then know it's not just I feel like we're losing. Or I
Right. It's
feel
a
like.
feeling. Get rid of I mean, listen, we need to feel our feelings. So I'm like, my therapist would say that, feel your feelings, Jeanette. But like at the same time, again, if you can quantify these things, again, I feel like we're coming out of this period, knock on wood, of COVID and anxiety. It's like, let's lower the anxiety. Let's look at the facts. And then if you can bake that into your system automatically, that's actually really, that's where the magic happens, because it's right there. And it could be anything from, I mean, here's an interesting thing where it's not even like, this just comes to mind. We had one client, they were worried from a sourcing standpoint of who they were attracting. And so they were like, okay, maybe we need to look at our, job description. Okay, how are we advertising? How are we putting these job descriptions out there? Like what's the, is their whole piece. And so we had given them, this product that was intelligent writing. It was like, okay, let's just look at the job description, like throw it through. Let's just see. Because, you could have these words in there, like, what do they say? Like hacker and ninja, that really like turns off people, but like sounds cool. You're like, oh, it sounds cool, but turns off people from applying. And so they were worried about that. And I like, this is a true story. I can't remember if I've even told you. It's like offline, where this one client threw in a job description through this, which is like literally in the technology. It's not like go somewhere else, put it in there. Because again, recruiters are busy, right? Like no one has time to, they're stressed themselves. And it came out that the word strong was used not once, not twice, not even 3 times in this job description. Ready? This is true story. I'm not fake news. I'm not making this up. 12 times. 12 times the word strong was in the job description.
I'm reading that as bring your guns, right? That's
right. It was like, and you're like, what? This was not like a police job. This is not like warehouse worker. We need someone really strong who's doing CrossFit. Or this is like, I can't, I don't want to give away too much because, I do want to protect the innocent. And they were like, oh my God. And so, there's something that's just almost subconscious that, if you put that tech and the data and like, oh, replace this word, change it up, again, go and share that information. Let's lower the anxiety. We know we're doing the best thing we can to attract, what the source of candidates that we need.
I'm going to rewind just a little bit because some people might not have heard of the tools that do that kind of thing. And I want to make sure it's clear.
That's true.
You mentioned AI earlier, right? That's I always wish I had my book on my desk, and I never have it here when I want to show it off. And like, oh yeah. But for those of you out there that aren't familiar with the kind of things that Jeanette's talking about, these tools can look at a job description, you just throw in all the text, and it can flag words you're using that might turn off a female candidate or turn off a minority candidate from applying for the job because it doesn't jive with them, right? The ninja thing was the one I'd heard of in the past. Mm-hmm. The others, but you're using strong. If you're reading that as a woman, you're like, this. Even if it's not intentional, you feel kind of weird about that potentially. It might just self-select out, even though you were a great fit, even though you might have been the best candidate for the job because of the way it's written. And so she's talking about you can find and flag those words and change them, modify them, right? Don't just say that you have a strong work ethic, right? You need to have a work ethic, right? Or trim it there, or use your thesaurus and change some of those up. So it's something less.
Or you have it right there where it's like, here's 5 options of other words instead that are like gender neutral or just like neutral. It's not going to, or I should say less likely to turn off, because you can't totally eliminate all this, but minimize it. That's also a big, let's minimize it as much as possible.
Yes. So I want to make sure that was clear, because those sorts of things, when you were talking earlier about the Met, right? About them trying to get these people in and trying to get women into the funnel. Right? They had them in the funnel, but for those companies that are struggling to get them into the funnel, then these kinds of things are going to help you to get them into that first stage, and then it's on your shoulders to help shepherd a diverse mix of people through that funnel through to the end when you're actually making the offers. So excellent. All right. So we're coming close to time.
Oh my God, already? Woo,
I'm having a blast, and I have 74 other questions to ask you, but I'm Gotta be respectful of
We're
your
gonna have
time.
to have like, part two, part two, part three. We'll just keep chatting.
That would be a blast. So if someone wants to learn more about Oleeo, the work your team is doing, some of the things we were talking about, right? How you're serving companies that really are prioritizing diversity right now in their hiring processes. What's the best way for them to connect?
I mean, the best way you can find out more information on our website. It's oleeo.com. You can find me or any of my team on LinkedIn or on Twitter, sort of everywhere. So, but lots of really good resources we have on our website as well. So team marketing would be proud that I'm like, yeah, no, go there. And
Got to
actually,
give
we have a
credit
chatbot too. We have a chatbot that like hangs out that could, also direct you as well on the website. So, which is also a really good thing for recruiter as well.
See, we've already got the teaser for episode 2 there in our.
There you go.
Wonderful. I've enjoyed this thoroughly. I always have fun with you. I told you this before we started recording because I love getting you have this expertise joining a tech company and now post, and you get to bring the best of both of those together and help us to understand more about what's happening, what you're seeing. You now have the benefit of seeing across this wide swath of customers around the globe and how you're serving them. So I've always enjoyed having a conversation with Jeanette. I appreciate you for hanging out with us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Ben. This is great, as always.
Absolutely. Have a good one. Awesome. Goodness. I love that. I hope you did as well. She's just a ball of energy and insight and knowledge and all those good things. She, like it or not, is strong. I was going to do the gun show, but now she's strong. She's incredible. And I just appreciate her. I hope you all enjoyed this episode of HR Tech Talks. We'll be back very soon with another episode. There's some things, holiday week next week. So hang tight. We'll be back soon enough, though, with more episodes of HR Tech Talks. And if you ever want to know more, want to learn more about what we're up to, you can visit the website, check it out. You can subscribe if you don't already. You can get the past episodes, all that good stuff. So I appreciate every one of you for hanging out with us, for joining me in this kind of learning journey as we're all picking up and learning from each other. So appreciate you. Have a great rest of your week and look forward to connecting again soon.